Welcome back to the Zero E Michigan podcast. Today with us, we have again Chris Lawrence. I wanted to do a follow-up from our last initial conversation because we had so many topics that we went on tangents and we can't explore them all in a single podcast. So I wanted to loop back. Chris had said something early on, the quote, and I'm looking at the side here. It says, level one charging will never work. And then we kind of talked offline and said, that was my initial thought, but that's not what I think anymore. So I wanted to focus on that, unpack that a little bit. So tell me a little bit, Chris, about what was your initial thought, level one charging. You had mentioned plugging in that loaner Mustang Mach-E onto a level one charger with the charge cord, and you got 50 miles overnight. And so what was your perception from there, and where did it grow from there?
Thank you for having me back. Thank you for considering me worthy to be a part of this. In my mind, I see vehicles out on the road, and I try to understand how much energy is out there on the highway or any given day. How many kilowatts? I tried to convert things either to British thermal units, BTUs, or to watts, kilowatts, the power that it takes to make things work, to make transportation work. Not just here, but
and me putting on my hat with Paul Pancella breathing down my neck. He's our EV friend who's a professor at Western. He would say, please don't conflate power and energy. Okay, power is instantaneous, right? That's how much you're getting at any point, or you're using at any point. And energy is the total amount that enables you to do work. So
right.
I hate to be pedantic about this, but we talk about kilowatts and kilowatt hours, and kilowatts is instantaneous. It's like horsepower. And then energy is like the BTUs. So
right.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And I don't want to get too technical about the power that's pushing you down the road, the energy that you're going to need later that's still in your battery or in your fuel tank, that's going to push you down the road in the future. So all of that said, in my mind, my non-engineering mind, there's a lot going on. When you see people at the gas pump putting fuel in their vehicle, when you see that fuel being burned out on the road, how does that equate to how do we get that out of the grid? And there are people, there's plenty of stories out there where there's, I want to say fear mongering, FUD, of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We haven't used that term lately.
Mm-hmm.
There are people saying this will never work. It'll crash the grid. It'll do this. It'll do that. Okay, so yes, I borrowed a vehicle for the weekend in Galesburg. Let me have it. And I saw this 110 cable, plugged it in, got 50 miles. Okay, I get
overnight.
It. But, say again?
Overnight, 50 miles overnight.
Overnight. About 10 plus hours, about 50 miles per day. And then at that point in my early understanding of, the world as I knew it, this didn't seem practical. Now I say, hey, level one is not just for breakfast anymore. That's the way I sign things. Level one charging, 110 charging.
Let's talk a little bit about charging levels. So what is your perception of what is level one charging versus level two charging?
Right. So level one charging is 15 amps, 110, standard outlet, things you would plug in, and you're drawing about as much as a heavy duty vacuum cleaner shop vac kind of thing. Good size, the powerful microwave or the powerful handheld hair dryer, blow dryer.
1,500 watts, something like that.
Yeah, 15 to 1,800 watts, and you're not going to blow a fuse. You plug two of these things in on the same circuit, you'll blow a fuse. Right. Even a 20 amp fuse won't take that. But it's the common household outlet, standard wiring type of thing.
And a lot of vehicles came or still do come with a cord that's capable of charging. So from day one, or in your case, you had a loaner. So you had a way to charge. It was super slow, but it's a way to charge from any standard outlet.
It's not super slow. It's the slowest. But if it meets your use case, if you drive less than 50 miles and you're charging overnight, it does everything you need it to do. You can live with that. It works. Literally, it's all you need. And our vehicle today, we could charge now that I know what we're doing, now that I know how this stuff works, we don't need 220. We could charge when the vehicle gets in the evening to when the vehicle leaves in the morning, we could charge 110. We'd have all the energy we need. We don't. We have the other interface, the larger plug, basically, it's the same connector
To the car.
electric vehicle service equipment, EVSE, the same adapter with just a different plug cord on the bottom of it.
Right.
now
So
we
that's a
charge.
question we get a lot at EV shows. Like, hey, does every vehicle have a different connector? And the answer is no, not really. A little bit of an asterisk. So the connector that actually goes into the car, what's called the J1772, it's a Society of Automotive Engineers standard, the J plug as we call it. That's the one that goes into every modern North American EV, with the slight asterisk that Teslas come with an adapter to use that. But it's the other end that you were talking about, right? So the part that goes into your wall, the 120 volt, officially called the NEMA 515 or NEMA 520. But then there's something you can use to get higher power and get more energy into the car overnight. So run with that.
From there, you can go to 220 volts, and then you've got a litany, literally, of NEMA connectors. Most vehicles come with, it's easy enough to get the NEMA 1450 50 amp plug, the new standard essentially for a range plug, or what someone might consider a welder plug.
Or the RV. It's the same one that's in
Oh,
the
yeah, it's the
RV
same as the
park.
RV. Yeah, it's very popular for the RV, and so it's in campgrounds and things like that. And so that will put the energy you need. You're getting 25 miles per hour with that cord, basically, depending on your vehicle. Here again, there's always a little asterisk because it's the size of the battery. If you've got a Ford Lightning, you've got a bigger battery than if you've got an Ioniq 5 per se, or a Tesla. So it's kilowatt hours that the battery needs, and how low is the battery? People the 10 to 90% or 10 to 80% rule, or 20 to 80% rule of keeping that much energy in the battery, because that's where the battery is. A lithium battery, the power source that these vehicles are currently using, in most cases, and there's some phosphate batteries and whatnot, but in most cases, the battery is pretty happy between 10 or 20 and 80 or 90%. How much did you actually need to put back in it? People, the fudsters will say, well, you can't do this
Takes too long
because
to
you need all
charge.
this
Yeah.
energy.
Mhm.
And it's not true. Truth is, you need to replenish for what you're planning to use next.
Use case.
The
Use case thing again,
exactly.
right?
It comes back to use case. So in my early perception with the 110, level 1, not the level 2, 220, those are your two AC household current charging. Then there's DC fast charging, which is another animal. That's mostly
That's road
commercial
that's
out,
road trips. That's for your road trips, basically.
This is where you're trying to get as much energy back in the vehicle as you can without going crazy, because let's go back to that 10 to 80% where the battery is happy. The battery is going to charge much slower as it gets closer to 100. It'll charge just really quick rate, usually to 80%. And then you're trying to jam that energy in there. The battery says, well, slow down. I can only absorb and find places for that energy at a slower rate. So you hear 20 to 80%, and then you hear DC fast charging. At home, where you've got the adapter, or maybe at work provides free AC charging. The charger is in the vehicle. It's taking AC energy, converting it to the DC that the battery needs. And so the level 2, 220 charging can be faster, and considerably faster. Here with our Tesla, I don't charge at 40 amps. I know that at night from 11 to 6 in the morning, and then on the weekends, we pay 7 cents a kilowatt hour. We pay this super saver rate. So
Just for clarification, the 7 cents is the energy cost. Then you have distribution cost. And so for if you're on the nighttime savers rate for consumers energy, it ends up being like 14 cents per kilowatt hour overall, because the distribution fee is the other big one that's irrespective of what time of day. So the 7 cents is for the overnight or the weekends, as you said. Now during the summer peak rates, it's going to be higher than that, but then the distribution is added no matter when. So I just want to make sure that people don't get the idea that 7 cents is not the all-in cost. It's about 14
good point.
cents. Yeah.
That's a
So
good point.
when you're doing apples to apples conversion of what does it cost to run the vehicle, 7 cents is not the number you want to use. That's what you're paying for the energy cost, but it's got to get to you and all that sort of thing. So on the, of course, full disclosure, I work for Consumers Energy. So on the rates page, if you look at the graphs, you will see for the rates, you will see the all-in cost, meaning everything. And it is an estimate because there are some portions of it, the little tiny charges that get that change on a month-to-month basis for whatever reason. But I just wanted to point that out, that it's the absolute cheapest rate is somewhere around 14 cents per kilowatt hour.
That's for Michigan, or would that be nationwide pretty much?
That's Consumers Energy
Specific.
in Michigan. Now DTE does the same thing. They've started using what are called time of use rates, meaning it's essentially it's a question of supply and demand. So the demand is highest in the summer when people are running their air conditioners. That's kind of what started all this. It's kind of like trying to make a hotel reservation in Traverse City during the Cherry Festival, right? So the rates are going to be super expensive because everybody wants to be up there and take part in the festival. And it's the same kind of thing for energy. If everybody wants to run their air conditioner during that one peak time, that's when the generation and the distribution needs to be there to satisfy everybody. And that's very expensive to do because you have what are called peaker plants. Those are electric plants that they don't do anything all year except during the peak power times they get fired up. So it's kind of like having a generator at home where it's kind of expensive to buy one if you only use it once or twice a year. So the per use is pretty expensive. So that's why the time of use rates came about. The whole idea is to try to incentivize people to use less energy during those peak times if they don't need to. So it's not that we don't want people running their air conditioners during that time, but for goodness sake, run your dishwasher later at night. Or now with the whole EV revolution going on, please charge your EVs overnight because that's when the energy is more available and we don't have to run those peaker plants. So yeah, there are a lot of places that use time of use. Some don't. So if we say Michigan, we need to be careful because some of the co-ops don't do that. My understanding is Great Lakes Energy, for example, does not have time of use rates. I could be wrong about that, but there are utilities that don't do that. But Consumers does, DTE does.
This is an evolving target because California, huge with EVs, leading the way, if you will. And now they're saying charge your EV during the day because that's when the green is coming on. That's when the solar is coming on, and they're trying to balance their grid.
Right. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
There's something right when solar is starting to become more prevalent. So what you're seeing is that during generation on sunny days, that generation picks up during the day, which was typically not the case when it was all fossil based. So there's actually something called the duck curve on energy generation. You can look that up, but it's essentially the demand and supply and demand curve that looks like the back of a duck, just because of when solar comes on. And then of course you have this period in the evening when it goes down, but there's still demand. The generation goes down, but the demand is still there. And then at nighttime, then the demand is lower, but also the generation for solar is lower. So yeah, good points. But yeah, so that's where time of use comes in. And as we move forward, we're probably going to, for EVs, do something called managed charging. So for now, we have the time of use rates where we say, okay, EV drivers, we're going to make it cheaper for you to charge overnight from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. But in the future, it may be different again, where we say, okay, right now the grid is not loaded up very much for whatever reason. Okay, EV drivers, go charge your cars, and your chargers or your vehicles are going to be smart enough to say, okay, I accept that. I have some capacity left in my battery. I'm going to go ahead and charge because you're making it cheaper for me, which is more dynamic. Right now, it's a little bit static where we say, again, charge overnight, charge less during the day if you can. But that's all going to evolve moving forward.
And I say I drive for free. As I'm adjusting the blinds here, we have a 12 kW array, so we produce our own solar. How does that work? Back to Carl, who is, and he is welcome to correct me. We produce solar, not L1, but we produce solar, and consumers with through net metering, and the program has changed. It's not net metering now, but our 10-year agreement is net metering, and they buy that energy at the kilowatt rate that is whatever the kilowatt rate is. They buy that excess solar that the house isn't using, goes out on the grid at whatever the rate is at that time. And typically when the sun's up, it's the higher rates in the summertime, the peak rate in the afternoon, rah, rah. And then we use it at night and we consume those credits back at a lower rate. So the credits, the energy that we buy it back at, we're doing two different rates here. So we actually get more energy back. Where consumers is balancing their books and still making a little money is on the distribution, where they charge us a higher distribution than they pay the distribution going back out. There's a couple cents difference. So they come out ahead so they can send people out to trim the trees every now and then. All well and good. We are expanding our array to make up for the energy difference. Now that we have the vehicle, our first vehicle, we will eventually buy another vehicle that's electric. So we're using more energy than before, and so we can expand our array, expand our agreement with consumers. We are also going to add batteries, so that we have the ability to balance. And what challenges me is the electricity here in rural Michigan goes out. Sorry, Carl, nothing personal.
No. It's fine. I'm also thinking this is a super topic. I almost feel we need a whole other podcast.
And I've gone off to level one.
We need a whole other discussion. It's a great discussion, but
let's wrap up the level
we'll circle
one.
back. I'll go back to level one. Okay, I apologize.
No. It's great. It's great because I love this. I think we can make a whole series out. We're going to have you as a regular guest, Chris. But these are great discussion. And I wanted to add one more thing before we go off of it. There are chargers now. Well, EVSEs. Thank you for providing that guidance. There are EVSEs out there that will monitor your solar panel production locally and say, okay, I'm only going to charge the car with the excess energy that I'm making, so that whole sending energy out to the grid and sending power out to the grid or pulling power back, that it's neutral. So then you don't have those distribution charges as much during those periods.
Charger,
there's a Zappy charger that's, I think it's in the UK. My understanding is another one here in North America called the Emporia. I've seen some chatter about it. I haven't looked into it, but that technology is coming where you can say, okay, I have solar, I have a separate battery, but I'm also charging an EV, and I want to maximize use of my own energy. Yeah.
How do we wrap up the level one? Though,
I wanted to say some of the,
I want to circle back.
Level one, I think there's a couple more things I want to talk about. And again, we're talking about use case. I think you mentioned earlier, like some employers having level one chargers. We did a video a while back on level one charging at the Muskegon airport for long-term parking. So I think there's some great use cases for that. Just going to visit friends and family if they're willing to let you plug in. So
that's what we
Chris,
did
any
just
thoughts
recently.
on that? Yeah.
Yeah, we have a family event up north in Macomb County, and we were able to plug in first at the hotel. We called ahead when we made the reservation. Nancy said, my wife, she said, we have an electric vehicle. Do you have a charger or have a place so we can plug it in? And they said no, but we have some outlets on the outside of our building and on our light poles, and you're welcome to use those. So they knew in our reservation that we were
Mhm.
coming with an electric vehicle. And so when we checked in, they said, "Oh yeah, you got an electric vehicle." And they said, "Hey, plug in if it works. The power pole or up here by the building, you can plug in your level 1." And
Mhm.
great. What do you want for it? We did not want to just
Yep.
take this
That's great.
and be like
Yep. That's
EV
great etiquette.
freeloaders or something.
Yep.
Yeah. And so they said, "No, no, no." They said, "Well, how much?" After they said no, I said, "Well, how much power? What is this going to cost?" And they said, uh, "Throw a ceramic heater out there in your parking lot or a blow dryer and turn it on." And that's essentially what we will be taking from that light pole. And they said, "Oh, that's no big deal."
Yeah.
And
Forget about it. Right.
essentially, they're right. It's if you even if you tack on the distribution charge on a commercial rate, whatever that building is paying at night, I'm going to say it's $3, $5,
Right.
Carl. You know,
Yeah,
just
I mean, if you use easy math, let's say it's 1500 watts, right? So 1.5 kilowatts. Let's say you're running that for 10 hours. So now you have 15 kilowatt hours. And now let's say it's 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which probably a hotel is getting a commercial rate that's lower than that. 15 times 15 is 225. So it's two and a quarter is what it is. $2.25. And what I usually say is, you guys got a tip jar? I'm happy to put something in the tip jar, or buy something extra here from your sundry store, because thank you, I don't want to be perceived as a freeloader. I want to pay my fair share, but where I struggle a little bit is, there are some campgrounds where you go in and they say, well, to charge an EV, it's $20. And I'm like, I know you're a for-profit business, I get it, but a car is not going to use that much. Okay, overnight, if you're plugging into a 50 amp, okay, maybe it costs $8 to charge my car. And again, you got to make a profit. I get it. But I just back to the level 1. I think that's a great way to handle it. I've done the same thing at bed and breakfasts. I have had somebody refuse me for that, where they said, "Hey, this is an old house. We don't know what the wiring looks like. I'd really rather you didn't." And that's okay. You got to respect that.
but asking versus just assuming,
Yes.
just
Right.
and
You don't
and
want the
and
maintenance guy walking through the parking lot middle of the night and say, "Hey, there's a car plugged in here. Here's
didn't know
those
about.
EV drivers again, freeloading off of our
Right.
power." We don't want to spread that perception.
Right. And so with that particular accommodation, we talked to them. You have a charger. We're talking to the lead manager, if you will, and is one off from the owner. The family, Nancy's family, knows the family that owns that establishment, and I need to follow up with them about putting in some level 2 charging at their facility, because it's kind of a dead spot between Howard City and 27 75 type of thing. It's on 46
So
there, and so
So now,
it's an area that could use something. And so I put a PlugShare sticker up and I registered it on PlugShare, and I haven't gone back to see if anybody has used it since then.
so now we
It's a
just
learning
went over
curve.
to level 2, and just my experience when I first got my Volt, the 110, it's about 10 hours to get the 30 to 40 miles. And so quickly I went and got 20 amp, because even the level 2 still only pulls 16 amps. So I ran and got 220 20 amp breaker and threw it in, because I had a box right there. And I think within the first couple days I had 220 out there, because now I can get at a 220 level 2, I can get a full charge in less than 3 hours, versus at the 110 was over. So I know I did that for myself. But like you pointed out, a lot of times the 110 is enough. And when we go to our meetings, and it's been reported, 50% of people are living off of 110. They never
Mhm.
change. They can survive off of 110.
And not to
Balancing
get,
act.
yeah, and not to get too nerdy on this, but there's 110 is the voltage, but then you also have to end up talking about the amps. So the voltage is kind of like in the water analogy, that's the pressure. Voltage is the pressure, and the flow is the amps. So, you have the 120 volt 15 amp circuit, which, by the way, by NEC rules for EV charging is considered continuous use. So you're only allowed to load that circuit up to 80% of its rated capacity. So you're really only drawing 12 amps. Your level 1 EVSEs are designed to only pull 12 amps out of a 15 amp circuit. So one of the things I've advised somebody recently who was on a Tesla forum says, hey, I'm only driving this many miles a day. Do you think I'd be okay with this level 1 charger? And, lots of answers. But one of the things I recommended was Tesla actually sells an adapter, an inlet adapter for their mobile connector for the 20 amp circuit. So instead of a NEMA 515, it's a NEMA 520. So at that point, 80%, you're getting 16 amps. That's 33% more. So maybe instead of 3 miles an hour, now you're getting 4 or 5 miles an hour. And that can make a difference for
wiring
the
can
cost
handle
of a $35 inlet adapter.
The wiring can handle it.
Right. So you need to plug that into a 20 amp circuit that can handle it, clear, right? But those are 20 amp circuits are pretty standard. That's what's pretty much in every modern kitchen. I have a 20 amp circuit in my garage. So if I needed to go level 1, that's what I would probably do. Buy the $35 inlet adapter from the Tesla shop, plug it into my universal mobile connector, Gen 2, and off you go. It's smart enough. It has the chip built into it to say, now I'm going to draw 16 amps instead of 12 amps, which gets me, instead of 1.5 kilowatts, maybe it gets me 2 kilowatts.
So in my early days of EVing and whatnot, and being at a college and back to looking at what all this is going to take, there's all those cars parked there at the dorms, at Western, at K College, at any college university. Now, the community college, you look at those parking lots at night, they're empty because those people are all commuters, if you will. Where the places like Western and K College, there's a lot of vehicles there. There's people living in the dorms. But those people are there until they go home for the weekend or until they go home at semester break, something like that. Those vehicles easily could live off a 110 charge, maybe once a week, depending on, they go work at a Wendy's or work someplace while they're there, but they're not going far. And so there's a balancing act. The airports, you say like that. Our other road trip with the car where we were up at a cottage up north by Gaylord Grayling area, there was a campground nearby, and I checked at the campground and they said, well, we've never done that before. And I said, okay, so where do we start? And they were, yeah, okay, so that car, I'll be back there again, and I'll pursue that again. We found an outlet on the outside of the cottage, and we plugged in 110. And over the days that we were there, we actually built back up to 90%. We just set the car at 90%. And every day we would unplug it at 70% or 76% or something like that. But then the next day it's at 82% because we weren't driving that many miles for sightseeing and whatever we were up to while we were on vacation up there. We weren't driving a long ways. Our event was there at that fire pit, at that lake, at that. We're going to go get groceries and bring them back here and roast weenies and build a fire. That was our entertainment. That's
your local use case, right?
So that was our local use case. And I've got some Vanna White pictures where she's doing her thing to say, here we are plugged into the side of a building for overnight. And we just there was a trash container there, the covered up thing where you put the trash out, and we just left the adapter, the mobile adapter right there. We didn't put it away. We just left it there. When we got back, we just plugged it back in. And when the car was sitting there, it was plugged in, and we were just gaining this energy slowly, and nobody cared. It's just, there's an outlet there. Use it. Plug in Christmas lights, whatever.
So we talked about that use case. We talked about long-term parking at an airport. One thing maybe for back into Larry's court, he owns some apartment buildings. Now the question there is always, when somebody's charging frequently for their overnight charging, at some point that amount of energy, while it's cheap for one night, it does add up over time, right? So then the person who's the owner or the manager of that apartment complex, whoever pays the electricity bill, they're not going to be super happy about this sooner or later for two reasons: for the energy cost, but also possibly overloading those circuits. If more than, as you pointed out, if more than one vehicle is plugged in, at some point you're going to pop a breaker, and then you don't know where that breaker is and you can't reset it. So there's a company, Orange Charger, and what they make is a smart outlet that
They get in different formats. They
it's
have a
well,
110
they have
format.
two actually, and in the context of level one, they have a level one and a level two. The level two is low power. It's a NEMA 620, so it is 240 volts, but a 20 amp. So that'll get you about 4 kilowatts. But they make a level one smart outlet that you could just literally pop into a 2-gang box that's on a 20 amp circuit. And the difference between a regular outlet and this orange outlet is a smart outlet, meaning there's a way for the building owner to capture the cost of the energy and actually pass it on to the person that's using it. So it's got a QR code on it. You know, it is networked. They do this in a smart way. They have a cell phone connection. They have a Wi-Fi connection. They do a mesh. It's
Sure.
pretty smart stuff if you ever look into it.
Yep, I have.
But yeah, but the idea is that now somebody who lives in an apartment building can charge off of level one overnight, which again may totally meet their use case. And there's a way for them to actually intelligently pay for it. And the owner of the building, again, whoever pays for the electricity bill, gets reimbursed for that. And the cost of one of these outlets is about $400. You know, it's not
What that
terrible.
cost?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Right.
I think that's pretty smart. And I think that's still a way that we can go. Everybody seems to be focusing on the, you know, if you have an F-150 Lightning, the onboard charger is an 80 amp charger. That's 19.2 kilowatts. Wow, I need this. No, well, probably you don't. Maybe you do, but for a lot of
Once in a
people,
while.
you don't. So, you know, if I'm living in an apartment and my only choice is a level one charger, I'm going to take it. So, I
Right.
again, use case. I think we just shouldn't rule out level one.
If that Lightning is part of Joe's construction company, and they're using that on the job site to power their saws and power their equipment and their heaters and whatnot at the job site, and that truck is parked either with an owner or employee, or it's parked at the shop overnight. Yeah, they're going to have an 80 amp outlet. They're going to charge that thing up because that's a tool that they're using. If the Lightning is something that I need a pickup truck to drive back around and I live in this apartment, yeah, it's a different use case. And maybe I need to take that big battery out on the road. So the orange connection doesn't get me what I need. Well, I'll swing by Sam's Club or wherever there are chargers.
Mhm.
I'll put some juice in it that gets me to my next charge. I think that's another thing that we haven't touched on is you don't need a full tank and range anxiety. Okay, there's somebody who lives in this house with me who would never let the escape get below 100 miles. So with that readout said 100 miles left to go, could be just the same readout that's in a Tesla or any other electric vehicle. It didn't do percentages; it just did miles.
DTEs,
But that was
distance
her
to empty,
threshold.
right? Yeah.
Nancy, yes, Nancy. So we've lived with this paradigm of how much, but one thing that I've kind of learned along the way is that you only need to get to your next charge. If your next charge is back here, we're going to go out and back, and then we're going to plug in tonight. Like that's what we're doing today, literally, and what we've done every day since the last time we were out overnight somewhere in January. And before that, we were overnight somewhere in September. Everywhere in between, the charge point has been here in this house, at this facility, where we have a certain level of connectivity with the rest of the world, and that's what works for us. So,
And it's the cheapest.
What's that?
And it's the cheapest.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
cheapest.
other than
it's the
other than
easiest
free.
as it's cheapest. Yeah.
Yeah, other than free.
And with the solar panels, it is what it is. It's either free or it's $30,000. Which number do you want to use? I'm good with either number. It's just
Well, there's a payback period. Again, I think we need to explore solar another time.
Yeah, but that's okay. Good, because that story is growing as we speak.
Any
Literally.
final thoughts on level 1 charging?
Yeah, look, I'll go back and say level 1 is not just for breakfast anymore. I think level 1 is a legitimate, it fills a use case. It has validity. It needs to be explored. I think the universities, the airports, the apartment complexes, there's going to be a curve here. We're at the very bottom rung as to what this thing will look like in 3, 5, 10 years. 5 years, 7 years, we're at the top of the ladder. This is not going to take long. Things are going to evolve. I saw on the news just recently, Channel 8, where an older building, maybe in Holland or someplace, was retrofitted just minimally, and it gave people what they needed. And there was an agreement that was just, if you're going to use the outlet, you're just going to pay X number of dollars per month. They were just put that on your lease. We're not going to do the orange charger thing, I believe was the tack they were taking. If you're renting the space, if the carport or the thing is on your lease and that outlet is only basically accessible to you, or it would be obvious if somebody else was using that outlet and running extension cord down the way.
There's a way to handle that. Yeah.
There will be people who do that, but there is a way to handle that, and it's the honesty and whatnot kicks back in.
But I think there's also a trend towards more efficient vehicles, which again, I think maybe
now
another topic, right? So people are not necessarily just charging cars, they're charging electric scooters and hoverboards, and
Like
mobility is going in so many different directions. I have a pre-order on an Aptera, which is this hyper efficient 10 mile per kilowatt hour 3-wheeler, which, with an overnight level 1 charge, you're going to get 120 miles of range, not 30 or 40, just because it's so efficient.
But aren't you the one who wanted a DC fast charger in that?
I did, because that works for daily, but you still would need DC fast charging for road trips, unless you have a super higher power level 2 charger. Use case. If I want to drive it, if I want to pick it up at their factory in Carlsbad, California, and it only has level 2 charging at 6 kilowatts, it's going to take me a while to drive it across the country. So the level 3 or DC fast charging makes sense for the road trip use case.
But why would you drive it across the country?
Because to me, it's the perfect.
Everything becomes a cross the country vehicle.
I know, because it's the perfect road trip vehicle. Driver. But it's so efficient. Why wouldn't I take that? If there are only 2 of us going, why would I take the Tesla Model Y if I'm not pulling a trailer or have a bike ride? If it's just the 2 of us with a couple of bags, the Aptera is the perfect vehicle, in my opinion.
But it should have enough range. It should have enough range to get you to where I'm tired of driving this thing for today.
Well, then you need to buy the bigger battery version, right? I mean, they do have a 1,000-mile version. I'm looking at the 400-mile version because my typical use case is going to be regional, local. So I don't want to drag a 100 kilowatt hour battery around if I'm only ever going 30 miles a day.
If you go 400 miles with that, you can go farther than your Y, and you've already said you haven't charged your Y.
That's right. So no, you're right. On a lot of cases, but if I drive to Kansas City, it's 700 miles, and maybe I want to do that in one day. Then I need to be able to zap it halfway through there. So anyway, yeah,
you're a better man than I ain't gonna get in. But I do see level 1 fitting for a lot of things. We just need to learn as a society, as a community, how this thing evolves, and we're looking at better batteries, more efficient vehicles, Apteras, and other things that are going to go farther. And there's a double-edged sword out there with the Hummer, and GM says they're going to do this or that. And GM says a lot of things, but that thing has got, I don't know, a huge battery in it,
212 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, and it you could drive around the block and it's empty. But they've only the saving grace in all of this is somebody just reported total number 884, I believe was the number. It's 848. Tesla's producing 5,000 cars a week. GM Hummers, there's 884 of them out there total.
Yeah. Well,
in 2 years or whatever. So they're not.
Yeah.
If you buy that, it's like buying a Lamborghini or whatever. It fits a certain niche of person who
Yep.
says, I gotta have that. For whatever their use case is. It's not gonna dent the grid because there just aren't that many of them out there.
However, it is interesting, we're both drive semis for a living, so we're in the big, and I like to think that that's the first prototype for heavy equipment getting electrified, right? For big rigs going.
Right.
And
So,
a dually, dually style, that Hummer is like the prototype. I'm glad to see that they are playing around with that. So
it's still better than the gas version, right? I mean, my understanding is that the Tesla Semi gets the equivalent of 20 mpg, right? Which is about 3 times better than the typical
you're
Semi.
definitely getting off the one.
We are.
The one
All right, let's wrap this up. It's good to know that we have more
We
to
can
talk
circle
about.
back around so many times.
So,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's not just the Tesla Semi, Volvo and Freightliner.
Sure. Right.
And International.
Everybody.
All three of those companies are out there. Lion, we could talk about school buses and where's it best for the planet or just kids and whatnot. Get them in electric school buses. But all of that said, level 1 is it has its place. It's not craziness to say, hey, this is my use case. This works. This gets the job done. This is all I need, or it's all I need most of the time. And then those other times I can rely on the infrastructure that's evolving and that's already here at K College, at Western, at all these other places. There's restaurants out here by Richland and whatnot, between Battle Creek and Richland, where there's level 2. Plug in while you can, while you're enjoying the restaurant. It's free. There's things out there, but level 1 is going to work. Level 1 is going to be there. It is part of it will be there as long as we have electric vehicles. Level 1's going to be there.
Right. Nope, that's a good summary. And so one other piece of advice for people who are just going to get an EV, maybe for starters, if you don't drive a lot, you don't need a level 2 charger at your house. Take the car home, plug it in with the cable that came with the car. If it didn't come with one, the level 1 EVSEs are super cheap now.
On
buy
Amazon,
one, plug it in. Yeah, Amazon. Just make sure you get one that's UL listed and good quality. Don't buy some piece of junk. But they're not inexpensive even for a good quality one. And see if that works for you. And then you can explore whether you need to go level 2 or you can, do some hybrid version. So, all right. On that note,
Tesla does require you to buy the.
Yes, that's what I meant. There's some vehicles now that don't come with them anymore, but the level 1 charge cord is super cheap. So, it's not a big investment.
Yep, I've been getting them under $200 delivered, and they usually come within a week,
right?
Sometimes days. So, anyways, all right, gentlemen.
Yeah,
it was
thanks,
good
Chris.
chatting.
Good discussion.
Thank you. It was good talking. Good seeing you guys.
Yeah,
it was a blast.
And then we'll pick up solar or another topic next time. You're just a wealth of information.
I'm sorry, or thank you. Sure.
All right, thanks, gentlemen, and we'll talk to you next time. If you enjoyed or learned from this episode of Zero E Michigan, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit our YouTube channel for other related videos at youtube.com/@0E-Michigan.